to a Sumerian temple, right? And all sorts of supernatural elements start popping up. We'll see what's going on here.
Yeah.
So, Golden Boy, we need you to get psyched up. We need you to get ready
Oh,
for the
no,
skits.
I'm excited to watch it. I'm going to be very scared. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to go over to the media area, and I'm going to, I'm going to be horrified because it's going to be great. It's time, though, for our next presenter. And here with their 2021 E3 presentation is Bandai-Namco presents House of Ashes.
An ancient horror has awoken from its slumber and is hungry for blood. Shall we see how many have fallen into shadow?
Satellite sweeps of the war zone have uncovered what appears to be an underground storage facility. But I strongly suspect it's where chemical weapons are hidden, so we need to move fast.
Ready to go dark.
To descend into the unknown alone is extremely brave.
Man out, hold fire.
Or extremely foolish.
We're gonna psy-op this shit.
Brothers in arms, or will it be a case of each man for himself?
Down, get down! We're up on the race! Return fire!
You teeter on the edge of an abyss. Your survival depends on the choices you make. They will be as a compass, guiding you through the unknown.
Where on God's green earth have we landed?
What nightmare have these luckless souls fallen into?
You keep lookout.
Lookout? Lookout for what?
One by one, their lights will be snuffed out. Unless you can find the means to save them. Trapped beneath the earth, swallowed
We have to move, let's go.
by the void. Will you find the path to salvation? Or be lost in the darkness forever?
We're here at Supermassive to talk about the next game in the Dark Pictures anthology, House of Ashes. And I'm joined by exec producer Dan. How you doing?
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. Right, so let's start at the very start. We're going to be talking about House of Ashes for most of the interview, but for those that don't know, tell us about the Dark Pictures anthology.
The Dark Pictures is a series of narrative, story-driven, branching horror stories. Each one is standalone. They each tell a different story, completely separated from the others, but within the same universe, so there is connection between them all. House of Ashes is set at the end of the Iraq War in 2003, with links 4,000 years ago that set the story up.
So tell us more about the theme and themes, I suppose, within House of Ashes.
It starts off with a military unit. They've got some new technology that can look for weapons of mass destruction underground. They think they've identified something in the Zagros Mountains in Iraq, and then as part of that they come into conflict with an Iraqi unit. There's a pitched firefight, and then the two groups are plunged underground. There's an earthquake of some sort, and it's revealed that there's a hidden temple underground. These big massive structures, but these different groups, they're all separated. Radio contact is lost, and they're submerged in this black darkness.
Where on God's green earth have we landed?
And then they're going to start hearing things and seeing things, and people are going to start disappearing.
What the f just happened?
So this time it's a very real threat.
All of the Dark Pictures games, they all pull something from real life or from history, from fact. What's the case with the myth or historical part of House of Ashes?
So we love looking at and reading myths and legends and stories and doing our research, and we know our fans love it as well because there's something that they can link into afterwards, and I love doing that when I'm playing games or watching movies myself. So this one's set 4,000 years ago, the Akkadian Empire, and this terrible evil that happened. We had this self-proclaimed God King, Naram Sin, and he essentially cursed his people. He sacked this temple and brought famine and devastation to his own people. And so a lot of the history is lost, but we've done a lot of research about it. And then we had a lot of happy accidents that linked into the story we wanted to tell. And the fun thing for us is we get to do our own take on it. We get to twist it, and obviously we've made our own truth from it.
At the end of the sneak peek, the trailer, we saw monsters. Tell us a bit more about what's going on there.
The military unit that you're playing as, they don't really know what they're coming up against. They're not human, they're bigger, they're larger, they're faster. The team aren't going to know if there's one or two of them, or hundreds or thousands of them. And that's kind of the threat with this. You know, they've got guns, maybe they could try and take one of them down. But maybe there's another one around the corner, or maybe there's a group of them, and maybe they're going to get ambushed.
Maybe they're like a cluster.
Exactly,
and
yeah,
they all pop
a
out
nest,
at once.
as it were.
Yeah.
And it's been really fun to work on and see these things move around and how horrific they can be. They're different to us. They perceive the world in a different way. Getting little snippets of it in the darkness, and did I see that? Was it something that moved? Or is it actually just one of the other soldiers that's stuck in the catacomb?
Who's there?
We like to try and misdirect people on things, you know, that did you see something, did you not? And that's a great thing within horror, that you think you're going to be scared right now, and we're not going to scare you now. We'll scare you in a minute when you're not expecting it.
It's always coming.
Yeah, always.
So should we expect a huge amount of peril in the game?
Definitely. We love to do it. You know, it's fun for us to work on, as horrific as it is, and we know that our fans love it as well. So yeah, there's at least 60 unique deaths, and there's a whole ton of variation on that as well. So Merwin and some of the others, you're going to see different things happening to them depending on how you play it out, you know, getting ripped and shredded and torn, and because there's a firefight, there's going to be bullets flying as well and all kinds of stuff. And it's not just the deaths, it's the gore that goes along with it, and you know, lots of blood.
Wicked. It sounds absolutely terrifying. I'm in.
Not gonna lie, man. It's pretty bad.
What differences have you made, or changes have you made to the gameplay and mechanics for House of Ashes?
We were always evolving the Dark Pictures. We listen to a lot of the feedback from our fans, and also our team, what they want to do, how they want to push things forward. So we tried some stuff in Little Hope with you know, more camera control, 360 cameras at certain parts, and we've really leaned on that again, and it really works well. In House of Ashes, lots of the game is set underground, and so these sort of corridors, which are really tight and oppressive.
Creepy.
Yeah, indeed. So we've had to learn, because you take away the fixed cameras, and that takes away some opportunities for horror. But we've had to learn new tricks to scare people, and you know, ramp up the tension and you know, the chance for jump scares, which we know some people love. We've also got a new torch mechanic, so you know, it's military themed. So these guys are going to be walking around with weapons, with torches mounted on them. We love the lighting that we do, the sort of really inky black darkness that we have, and sort of the contrast to the bright areas. And so you're going to need to lean on that torch to allow you to see where you're going, what the threat is, and that kind of stuff. We've also done things like added difficulty settings to this game. So in Little Hope we added you know, QTE warning icons as an example, and we've got some really good positive feedback about that, but also some people want to turn that off. We want to allow you to play the game in your way. So with our accessibility settings and difficulty settings, if you want to have a more casual experience, you can change those settings. Still, most of your characters are going to end up dead, but you know, that's
spoilers, yeah,
indeed.
But that's what we come here for. That's okay, we can deal with it. So I've got to ask, what was it like working with Ashley?
So Ashley was fantastic. She researched Rachel. She understood her when she came on the set, which is so refreshing. She knew her inside out. And Rachel is a flawed character, so she brought that through so fantastically. The rest of the cast were fantastic as well.
When we were looking for Joey, Salim helped me.
And you didn't tell me this because...
You'd flip your shit.
We want you to connect to these characters and understand them as humans. We want them to seem real, because they're real to us. You know, we spend a long time designing them, and I don't mind if you hate any one individual character, because you don't like everyone in real life. But maybe you'll like them when you see the journey they go on.
Maybe you'll like them once they're dead, and you feel bad about it.
And you feel bad about it, definitely.
Yeah.
But also, we want you to save them. We want you to try and save them. You know, we know that some people want to get everyone killed straight away, and that's fine. That's their playthrough. Cool. That's what they want to do. But you know, can you get everyone out alive and save as many as you can?
There's a lot of replayability there.
Indeed,
it's on forever. I like that. So, last question. Favourite scene?
Favourite scene? So, Salim, our Iraqi soldier, and Jason Kolchak, one of the Marines that's there. There's a way that can play out, and a sort of contest between them, and you can make it go in a number of different ways.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
it's really emotional. Seeing them film it, I was lucky enough to be there, and then seeing that come through in game, I think we've got something there. I think that's gold. And then, of course, I love scaring people, so I love the jump scares. I love the moments of tension that we bring. We can't hold you in that moment, so we've got some fantastic jokes in there as well to allow you to relax for a moment before we scare you again.
To take your mind off the imminent threat. I like that. Dan, thank you so much. This has been really cool to talk about, and I'm sure, you know, I'm excited and terrified in equal part, and everyone else is just excited, I'm sure of it.
And it's been a real pleasure to speak to you, and I can't wait to get it into people's hands.
It's going to happen.
Before we dive in the House of Ashes, see how scared you got, of course, we want to thank Razer for being one of the E3 2021 sponsors. Of course, giving us these tired old blades nobody cares about. But this Blade 14, RTX 3080 built right in. Of course, the Razer
I'm taking that.
Thank you so much. No, I'm taking that.
Okay, we'll fight.
Okay, well,
we've done it before.
You know what? I'll take the hand-me-down. I'll be little brother. I'll take the outdated. Nobody wants these anymore, right? Doesn't worry. Golden Boy, you just saw the Dark Pictures anthology.
Yeah.
Your first glimpse of it. We have some reactions from you.
Oh, you do?
They were recording you. They said you were a little scared, not terrified.
Not terrified, thankfully, because it was just a normal trailer, which is fine. There's my face.
You're unsettled for sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, you don't like that. You
don't like that. No, not a fan of that one either. Nope.
Nope.
Yeah, I think that was one of the jump scares.
Dark Picture Anthology at House of Ashes. So Supermassive Games in Liverpool, UK, making that one, being published by Bandai-Namco. I personally have fallen off the Dark Pictures Anthology, very guilty.
Wind Demons, no big deal.
Come on, everybody knows that. I don't even know what the King of Wind Demons is. What was it?
Oh, he's Pazuzu.
Oh my goodness, okay.
You may remember him from The Exorcist as well?
Yes, okay. Avi, you were obviously a big fan of the... Sorry, we're like, Dan's just like, I could go on. Pazuzu! Exactly. I was like, okay. But Avi, we've been talking about Resident Evil Village, like, at length. We both like horror survival. But also, like, when someone's playing with us, and I thought that it's great that it's co-op, so we can be scared together while we play.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be sitting behind Dan and watching him play, because that's exactly what I did with Until Dawn, because I'm like, cool, I can't hold a controller and, try to guide these teenagers to safety. I'm going to step on a branch and individually kill them all. But Dan was going into like the history of all of it, and I'm going as like, oh, 2003, that's a little too close. And I didn't pass all my history classes, but I hope that Pazuzu doesn't, pop up anywhere in a textbook. But something that was really interesting for me when we were going through the trailers and going through that little dev talk is that they showed us Pazuzu. They showed us the monster. They showed us what it looks like inside the cave. So there's part of me wondering, like, usually with horror games, you don't show people the scary right away. So I'm wondering if maybe there's like a hidden layer of something else that they're not showing us yet that's going to catch people off guard, thinking that they're going in going like, I did my research, I know everything.
I know how to deal with a Pazuzu, this is easy.
I know. So you two would fall into the depths together, and then I would somehow be stuck with Michael, and he'd be like talking about JRPGs, and I'd be like, oh my goodness, we're in a world of hurt right now.
If I make a deal with the devil, I can turn into a very attractive protagonist, and then I can probably possess Pazuzu if I do negotiations like you can in SMT5. No, anyway, like, one thing I want to say about this one is the free cam controls. That's different for Supermassive, so I'm going to wonder how that works, because I feel like they're very in control of camera angles and what you see before you make choices. I'm sure there's like transition phases where you actually make your choices and all other stuff. It's just something new from them, so I just want to see how that plays out, especially when I'm with a bunch of other people trying to get very scared.
And Damon, I know you're all about retro games, but I also know you love a good story. I know for me, I felt like this had a lot of heart. There was dialogue that we saw, and it really hit me to my core.
Yeah, and they showed the actors doing the motion capture. I love horror movies, I love horror games. I'm a kind of a gore hound. I love blood and guts, and I love kill gags. Whoa. So like, I'm looking forward to see all the inventive and clever ways that Pazuzu is going to kill our soldier friends.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. I just like saying Pazuzu, even though it's absolutely horrifying. Yes. Anyways, GOMS, I can't talk. Games have changed and evolved so much over the years, and with those changes, so has the coverage of our favorite games. Outlets like PC Gamer, IGN, Polygon, and GameSpot have all led the way in gaming coverage, and for the first time ever, we've assembled the editors-in-chief of all those organizations and our Voices of E3 series. Take a look.
Hello, welcome back to E3 2021. My name is Chris String. I run GamesIndustry.biz, which is one of the world's biggest video games business websites. And joining me today to talk about E3 and the future of games in general are some of the biggest names in the video games media, from IGN, GameSpot, Polygon, and PC Gamer. But rather than me do the introductions, I like to pass over to the panel. Hello, everybody. Who are you? What do you do? How did you get here?
Sure. I'm Christopher Thomas Plant. That's my full birth name. It sounds like Christmas Plant if you say it really fast. I'm the editor-in-chief of Polygon.com, and it's a website.
Thanks. This is Evan Lottie over at PC Gamer. I'm the editor-in-chief.
Hi, everybody. Tina Amini, editor-in-chief of IGN. I don't have a cool Christmas Twitter name, but I do have a really cool Halloween Twitter name that someone gave to me, which is Tina Aminideville. So that's all I got.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Randolph Ramsey. I'm the editorial director from GameSpot. I go by Randy in this country because while it's okay to be called Randy in America, if you say that anywhere else in the world, you will be met with sniggers. You can't say, hi, I'm Randy, to anyone else out there.
Yeah, it's definitely true for us in the UK. So asking to all of you here, what does sort of E3 sort of represent to you? I don't know if I want to pick on somebody, but Randy, maybe.
It's difficult to separate E3 as a professional working in the industry and as a fan. I've been in this industry for so long that, you know, it's E3 to me is usually just a lot of late nights, you know, being overworked, not having enough sleep. But I think, you know, outside of the professional stuff, I think E3 for me, you know, it allows me the chance to feel like just a regular old fan of video games. You know, I still get hyped about stuff that, you know, gets revealed. Yeah, and you know, for those brief shining moments of those, you know, major press conferences or, you know, during, you know, like a key announcement, you know, I can sort of forget that there's all this work that I need to do around this big event and just like be a fan of video games again.
Yeah, having that in-person reaction, like you're typically sitting, if you're at a press conference, which I think probably for many of us, we maybe stopped attending them in like a physical capacity and maybe had like, we're in a war room of sorts with our team. But in general, just being able to sit next to your team and everyone's like reacting and then quickly scrambling to their keyboards again because they need to be typing up the news. That's obviously the primary element of it. But for me personally too, it's a bit of a reunion because we'll all see each other in person. But it is that opportunity to have that one space, that 1 week. We all agree we're going to take that time and be in one space together and be able to connect.
Yeah, I think E3 is the center of gravity too, right? I mean, in an environment, we saw what happened last year what happens when there's not an E3, right? Everyone kind of goes it alone. And, you know, there's definitely some pros to that, but I think from a coverage perspective, we like having, I mean, you guys probably all share the same attitude. We like having as much time as possible to, you know, do an interview, cover something and not be rushed off to the next thing back to back to back. But there is kind of an efficiency for us, I think, and the viewer, the consumer, and having everything neatly collected under one roof for, you know, 3 or 4 days. You know, the intensity and kind of spectacle that comes as a result of that, I think, can be genuinely fun and exciting. So, I mean, at least in North America, it looks like E3 will continue to be that center of gravity for the foreseeable future.
For better or worse, you get reminded very blatantly that, like, this is a human enterprise. There are some real people who are putting in some, like, long hours trying to make for the best possible event for all of us.
Well, this year is a digital event, and there are lots of questions about what E3 becomes in the future. There's a lot of chatter about that. So what do you hope to see from it come sort of 2022 or beyond that? What are your hopes for the future of E3, and what would you like to see?
It has to become more social. And I think that is a thing that E3 was like leaning towards. I think it's like important to remember like what function E3 served back in the day. You know, in the 90s, video games were for children or dorks. And mainstream publications covered it once a year, and all video game companies need to put all their money into one basket and pray that the New York Times wrote that story, right? Now it's the opposite. I mean, sure, newspapers are still catching up, but otherwise, video games are the center of culture for young people. I think The Guardian wrote about that. And because of that, E3's purpose no longer has to be, hey, let's get people excited for this one day. Let's put all of our money into it. It has to be something different, which it seems to be more celebratory, right? Like that kind of has become a purpose. So I hope that whatever we see it become in the future is, like you said, Chris, more inclusive, that it is this thing that is bringing people in, that is the center of gravity, that is serving a larger communal purpose.
And it is significant, obviously, despite the drawbacks of everything, of all of us being in a pandemic that's going to be running about 2 years long by the end of this, or hopefully just 2 years long by the end of this. I think it is significant that when we are being in this digital format now, I think it's nice that more people can connect. Obviously, it loses some of that social element. So I too, like Chris, hope that is retained, and I selfishly hope that we all go back in person. But I think keeping some elements digital does help kind of connect to a broader community. And there can be various aspects of that. Obviously, the press conferences are something that are typically digitally available to begin with. But are there some of those panels that have been introduced, or some other versions of connectivity or versions of celebrations that is something that people can experience in person or at home too, to feel like they're a part of that entire celebration of the festivities, of the news breaking, and they can get a sense of that same excitement that they may be feeling home alone because for whatever reason they're not able to attend.
I'm kind of hopeful that the live aspect becomes a lot more like Comic-Con in the future, in which it's much more a celebration of games culture, and community while you're there live in person. I think the ESA, as everyone pointed out, has been sort of moving towards this hybrid thing where, half of it is still behind closed doors meetings with retailers, and then they're trying to, introduce more people into it, and they can play some games and look at some big booths. But, I think, Comic-Con does that thing where it does service the fan aspect of it really well by having that focus on the show floor of the culture, things you can buy, artists you can interact with, while still having that sort of hype vehicle and talking about the next big thing. So if anything, I would hope that they push that sort of live community aspect more when you're there.
How far do you think they should go in that direction? Like, would you like to see them take a full-on Gamescom approach where there are, potentially tens of thousands of people, having a full public day, dedicated to, that's really servicing the public more than the trade side, the business side?
Yeah, I think a traveling E3 show that goes around all year and visits multiple cities.
Some people will hate you for that one.
Yeah. Luckily, I'm not in the USA. But yeah, and I realized that PAX does this to a certain extent as well. But I think what E3 could be is still have that spotlight on the biggest and the best things, and allowing people to as I said, get hyped, get excited about their favorite hobby.
Yeah, and just to build off that really quick, I think the thing that developers are going to have to ask themselves now, and we've really hit this turning point culturally, is can we let go of the secrecy, right? Because Comic-Con works because they put talent in front of people. But when you put talent in front of people, suddenly they have leverage. And that means that, they're worth more money. I mean, just to be very blunt. And that goes for voice actors, that goes for designers. And I think there is a version of E3 and all conferences that makes a lot of sense where, we don't need to have vertical slices for every game. They cost a ton of money. They take up a ton of hours. There can be a distraction. But if these people become celebrities in their own right, that can take their place. That can create these Comic-Con environments. And I would love to see that. I think it would be healthy for the industry as a whole, for people to actually be, again, in front of their games, not just behind them.
Evan, actually, I'd love it. you mentioned the Gamescom model, but as a business journalist, I actually find I love E3. I love all the excitement of it. I love the buzz of it. But as a business journalist, it's a nightmare. It's just like, it's busy and noisy, and I want to talk about sales figures, right? And it's there's almost two parts of me. There's the fan that wants to see the big booths and the exciting, all the noise and stuff, and then there's the part of me that wants to have a little quiet place to have a cup of coffee and a bit of Wi-Fi and a bit of networking. So I think I would like to have a sort of business show and a consumer show that sort of sit side by side. I don't know how you I don't know how you fit that into the LACC, but I think that's something that I would like. But I mean, at the same time, they're sort of moving to that sort of hybrid model anyway, and I think transitions are always tough. But I'd love to see that kind of thing. Yeah. Is that something that you're interested in?
I mean, with the kind of competition that we've referenced here with PAX, right? It's just essential that these events have a true purpose that is contemporary and really self-aware of what else is happening and the other options people have. I mean, when you go to PAX, right, you see families. I see lots of, thinking back to the PAXs I've gone, it's like mothers and daughters and fathers and sons that have like decided to take their vacation to this event because they're a huge fan of, GameX, and they want to hang out and be a part of that, right? And I mean, like, it's interesting to get a sense of like our kind of multifaceted feelings in this conversation, because like GDC is probably my favorite event of the year because the press is not the focus at all. There's not like big announcements or anything. And yet we as press get some of our best material out of GDC because it's an environment where game developers are just talking to each other and we're kind of listening in. And it's an environment where game developers like have their guard down. They're not, engaged in the deep secrecy that I think Chris is referencing there very often, right? They're doing panels. They're sort of, talking up their design and, their narratives and like, what's kind of interesting to them in the moment. And that's a great environment for interviewing and discovering stuff. So I don't know. I mean, whichever direction E3 takes long term, I just think it sort of has to not compromise and sort of meet in the middle of all this stuff, but really have clarity and identity.
Well, I'm very much aware of the time, so I'm going to wrap up with a sort of fun last question. So what is a memorable E3 interview that you can share with us?
Mine's a little sad in retrospect, but I still very much enjoyed the conversation that I had. It was before No Man's Sky came out, and I interviewed Sean Murray, and he was so excited to talk about this game and to talk about all the procedural generation and that work that was going into it. Alongside that interview, he had one of his programmers like showing me behind the scenes how that procedural generation worked. I thought it was such an interesting way of doing an interview where I was actually seeing behind the scenes elements of what was actually going into the game while he was speaking to them in what was a really eloquent way. So it's only a little sad in retrospect because obviously there are a lot of moments where developers kind of maybe regret, like, did I say too much? Did I accidentally promise something that I wasn't intending on promising? But I think ultimately at the core, for me in that experience, like I could just see his passion and I could just see his pride for what his team was working on. And I think that there's something still, really genuine and true and heartfelt about that.
I mean, for me, my favorite interviews are usually the conversations that happen at restaurants or bars afterwards, because E3 interviews tend to be very prepared. People are very press trained for them. So I guess I'll share something else, which is my favorite moment of E3, and it's very ego-driven. But a few years ago, I was at E3 at the front of the main hall, right? And it was the final day, and I was doing a direct-to-camera of like, hey, this is E3, I'm going to wrap it up. And at this point, I'm like running on no sleep, and I'm like covered in sweat. I look like an absolute mess. And from behind me, this very lovely, tall, and handsome man comes around front, steps in front of our camera as I'm preparing, bops me on the nose, and just goes, too cute, and then walks off. And it was like it was the nicest I've ever felt in my entire life.
Like you, Chris, the best conversations at E3 happen outside the floor, outside these kind of formal settings. Dean Hall is someone who's just an absolutely unfiltered, water hose of information and design thoughts. Like anytime I sit down with him, it's a chance to sort of sort of, you get the sense that he's peering into his sketchbook. I mean, this is someone who's fundamentally optimistic and imaginative, and, you know, half the things that he tells you, like his idea for a mountaineering game, or because he'd climb Mount Everest, like, they're not going to come true, but it's still like just someone who's just constantly dreaming and is like completely removed from that scripted, you know, media-trained personality that we're referring to here.
Real quick for me, just like Chris, not the best, but for me the most embarrassing, having to play Sekiro in front of Miyazaki, and then do an interview. Couldn't get past the first enemy I came across, and then I had to do a 50-minute chat with him, so that was lovely.
Well, thank you so much. That's it from us. Thank you to Tina, Randy, Evan, and Christopher. Thank you so much. Do check out all of our websites for all your E3 news and goings on. Have fun during the event, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
IGN Summer of Gaming has officially partnered with the ESA for E3 2021. IGN Summer of Gaming is now all summer long. From major press conferences and announcements at E3 2021